Today's meeting, we've got Tim Baker, our resident expert on genealogy, who's put together I'm
It
sure,
was unplugged, but now I got a rumble.
to give us all great information on, I believe, Richard Stoddard, who is the quote guinea pig for today's genealogy presentation. So with that, I will turn it over to Tim and we'll hear what we've got. Thanks.
All right, I was kind of waiting on Larry to see if he could hear us. Now we can't hear him, he's muted. So
He's probably muted, yeah.
All right. I'm gonna share my screen and make sure that y'all can see the prezo here. So y'all with me there? You see that?
But we need to keep talking. You
Okay.
know when he does find us.
Okay. All right. Very good. So, well, good morning, everybody. Welcome to Beginning Genealogy. I'm Tim Baker, as y'all were informed there. And today is May the 14th. Thank God it's not Friday the 13th, because I would be worried about my presentation being given to you on Friday the 13th. So let's begin. So I imagine there's several of you that are present today that are probably already involved in researching their ancestry. I've got a cat in my lap here. It's going to give me, oh, come on, oh, just go. Jeez. All right. So anyway, but don't want to bore you, but I do want to let you know that it was during a Mac user group meeting about 12 years ago over here in Fort Worth that I became interested in investigating my ancestry. So I've learned a lot. I've come along. Let's get started here. So why on earth would you want to trace your ancestors? So father and
I think you're breaking up on your sound there a little.
what you might find.
Tim, you need to speak closer to the mic. It's dropping.
Thank you. And PBS's Find Your Roots have definitely contributed to the popularity of being curious about their family heritage. And certainly I would think you would be interested in knowing where you came from and who you came from. So, and we do this because it's fun and exciting. It is very interesting. It is educational for sure. It's challenging. That's another big thing. There's lots of places to look and always all your resources to gather new information. And it's rewarding once you find out some interesting facts. You can really take pride in learning about your past. The other thing that we found, I just seem to get addicted to it. I can't get away. My wife resource was the family Bible, and that's a good place to start. I was fortunate enough to have my grandmother's handwriting in my Bible, and she had given me as a child, so it had a lot of important dates within it. But you have to be careful. You have to just work with the facts. A lot of things that you read, you might believe they're associated with you, but there's a lot of people out there that have the same names. I actually have a Timothy Baker, that's about 3 blocks down the street. So there's people out there that have the same name as you. So you really have to be careful and maybe double check your facts and look at the citations that come with what you're finding to find out whether or not what you're seeing is accurate. So I know all of you have tons of family pictures. This is some of the collection that I've created or found over time. So the next question is that, who are these people? I mean, one thing that you can do a lot of times is just flip the photograph over and see what may be written on the backside. You might find there's some pertinent information like a date or a time or a place, or even identifying who the person is. And I was able to do that on a couple of these photographs. So also, fortunately, was able to find some handwritten ancestry that was handed to me from my mother, that was written by my grandmother, that describes her side of the family, which was obviously put me in a very good position, gave me a good start to researching my ancestry. Some of it was a little difficult to read, but we did eventually figure it out. One of the fun things is, and we talked about having fun, is that occasionally you'll run across, or frequently you'll run across old newspaper articles. This is one from back on July the 9th of 1916. And this talks about my great-grandfather in Denver, Colorado, devoting his life to educating children and making them happy. And this is actually a picture of their residence on Fox Street. And my mother actually remembered living there. So, and this is my great-grandfather and his lily pond. And he actually imported these lilies and grew them and sold them. So that's one of the things that I learned from reading this newspaper article that I found was particularly interesting. So building your family's tree, you start basically with what you know. And you start with say yourself, perhaps your wife, and then you go on to your parents, your wife's parents, and you work your way up the tree. And then when you get to a certain point, you begin to have questions, because you're not finding the answers. So doing the research on the various websites that I'm going to show you will help you obtain that information that's much further out there. So, trying to be funny here, I shook my family tree and a bunch of nuts fell out. So how do you research your family? It'll be easier, actually be easier than you think. There's tons of resources out there. Actually, all this got started back up in Utah. The Genealogy Society of Utah, which was actually established way back, founded in 1894. So thanks to them, they've built the Family Search Family History Library, which is courtesy of the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints. And it's one of the largest genealogical, see, I give them a presentation, I can't even pronounce it, libraries in the world. So this is where a lot of your information that you're going to find about your family is going to be stored in these archives. So Family Search. This is the home of the website. There's a little interesting blurb here. I'm going to see if I can switch out without ruining my presentation here. I'm going to click this link here and see if I can launch Safari. Hopefully you can see that. So this was a nice article that talks about basically the history of where it all began, which I thought was particularly interesting. And let's see if I can move this over here just a little bit. There we go. So I can see the arrow. So there's the building that I had the image of back in 1894, where the society was founded to help the church members basically trace their family trees. And microfilming actually began in 1938. I had no idea it was that early. I figured microfilming didn't come around till later on. This is another interesting point. In 1966, all these records needed a safe place to be stored, so they built a long-term storage in a granite mountain. So that's, there's history will remain for so long as the mountain stands. So for the most part, in 2002, records became searchable. And finally, I guess that was it for that one. Let me see if I can go back now to my Prezo. So you're going to find that you're going to have information overload, because there's all kinds of places to look. The family Bible, as I said earlier, the old photographs, as I said earlier. One of the fun things you can do, you can ask your family members, that perhaps they know things that, that they haven't passed on to you. Fortunately, my mother lived to be 95 years old, and I was able to consult with her for a lot of good information. I obviously wish she was still here, because I've found some information that I wish I would love to be able to verify with her. Obviously, there's plenty of places to search online. There's you can join a genealogy group. There's actually one in Dallas, and there's one in Fort Worth. There may be even more than one in Dallas, the local genealogy group that you can join. You might check with your local library, and because our group over here in Fort Worth meets at the library. The Church of Latter-day Saints, there's actually a local over here on Alta Mesa Drive in Ulen. There is a Church of Latter-day Saints that has a research center that you can actually go and visit, and the people there will be more than happy to help you whenever you reach a roadblock in your search. The public library, I haven't used them too much, but obviously there's a lot of resources there that you can search, hunt out one of the employees there, and tell them that you're looking for their genealogy department, and I'm sure there'll be somebody there that will be eager to help you. The National Archives, I just discovered that we have a National Archives here in Fort Worth, very close to me over near Everman, that you can visit in person and go over there and actually use their computer equipment and investigate your past. Or if you really want to get into it, you can actually hire a professional. There are professionals out there that are more than eager to take your money and help you find information that you didn't even know existed. So once you get started, you're going to see all these things like parentage and relationships, relatives, birth, forebearers, so forth and so on. So what does this all mean? We need to review some of the terms here and get you familiar with what some of these terms are. So common terms: genealogy, for one. This is the line of descendancy that is continuously from one ancestor to a descendant. The word also refers to the study of ancestral lines. Then you've got ancestor. Your ancestors are people who came before you in your family. The term usually refers to the relatives more distant than grandparents, such as your great-grandparents, your great-great-grandparents, and so on. Ancestors may also include people from whom you are not directly descended, such as great aunts and uncles. And then you've got descendants. Now, the difference between a descendant and an ancestor is descendants are people who came after a given individual in the family. So that's a definition of descendant: children, great-grandchildren, so forth and so on. Let's start over again. There we go. Let's get back where we were. Okay, then you've got some more in-depth terms: direct lineage and collateral relatives, which may not really be important to us at this point in time, but direct ancestors are people whom you are related through a parent-child relationship: aunts and uncles, siblings, and other family members. My family tree is full of people that they're so distant that it's like, how on earth are they even related to me? But they are. There's maternal and paternal lines, and this one you probably are already familiar with. A maternal line is the ancestral line that goes through your mother, while the maternal, it goes to your mother. It's the paternal that goes through your father. So that's the difference between maternal and paternal. So then you've got a pedigree chart. These are always interesting because these are really the heart of your family tree. This shows you your direct ancestry, the person's, your grandparents, your parents, your great grandparents, and so on, without siblings, aunts, uncles, and cousins. This is basically your basic blood relation. So I'm not even going to get into the first cousins once removed. I mean, that's always been a confusing thing for me. But once especially if you submit a DNA test, you're going to find that you've got fourth and fifth cousins out there, and you're going to see names that you have no idea where these people are coming from, but through DNA they're related to you, and you can fortunately be able to see that happen. A citation I mentioned before. This is something that actually proves the fact that what you're looking at and what you're documenting is actually been documented and is accurate. So that's where I was talking about making sure that you utilize only the facts, that you don't just believe something that you're reading that think, well, I think that might be right. So you want to make sure you're dealing with the facts. So I mentioned the DNA test, and the DNA test, you know, maybe get a little bit scary at the first, and you might even need to be prepared for something you didn't know. Oddly enough, I was quite surprised that I found two brothers. Go back in my notes here. I'm sorry, got ahead of myself. I found two brothers and a cousin that I didn't even know I had, and it made for a very interesting story. And it's sad in some situations, but because I found out that, you know, my own father, who divorced my mother and married my stepmother, actually had an affair with another woman during the war, and through that relationship, I have two brothers. They actually found me. They texted me, messaged me through Ancestry, and I was immediately suspicious of the messages. But some of the information that they were giving me, because of the fact that they had, you know, they knew things about my dad and my stepmother that, you know, only someone that knew them or, you know, would know. So I queried my sister, and, you know, my sister's like, no, I don't know a Mike and a Mark Baker. I've not ever heard those names before. Well, through the research, I found out that I had another brother that was the son of my stepmother, actually had a photograph of the woman and the two sons that my dad well, didn't really raise, but obviously produced. And then so we actually met them about 5-6 years ago, and it was quite nice having. We began to have a yearly family reunion up until COVID came along, which stopped us from obviously meeting in person, but we still keep up with each other on the phone and through text messaging and email. But yeah, it's been quite interesting to hear their story, and they were anxious, obviously, to find out whether or not their father still was living. And unfortunately, my dad passed away in 1998. And by the time they contacted me in the late 2000s, obviously he was already gone. So they didn't have the privilege of, unfortunately, being able to meet him in person. And then I could carry on about my cousin that I found. That's kind of an unusual story, but this is some of the things that you'll run into when you submit a DNA sample. Just be prepared for a surprise. You may find some people that you didn't even know you had in your family. So you're paying for that DNA kit. It might be worth it if you can find better relatives. So sites to research your tree. There's all kinds of things out there. Obviously, the one that I use is ancestry.com. That's probably by far the most popular. myheritage.com.
Can I mention something about the DNA thing,
Yes.
Tim?
Yes, I'm here.
What's interesting is the DNA, if you submit it, they'll give you that whole map of where your DNA comes from, and it's actually quite interesting.
Yes.
It breaks down the percentages of where you came from.
Yeah, it shows. Yeah, it shows your. I always say I can't think of the term right now. It basically gives you a map over time of what, you know, how you can see graphically how where and when your ancestors came from the country of their origin to the United States. And I can actually show you that. We can visit the DNA site, and I can certainly show that to you.
Okay, thanks.
So MyHeritage, the archives.gov, familysearch.org, genealogybank.com, Find My Past, USGenWeb, rootsweb.com. Several of these are actually free, which is quite nice. Ancestry is obviously a paid service, but Family Search is free. Genealogy Bank is somewhat free. They do have a subscription that's available to you. Roots Web is free. Archives.gov is obviously a governmental website that's free. My Heritage is kind of neat. I'll show you some cool features that My Heritage is exclusive for in a
Tim,
moment.
can I make a point real quick
Sure,
on ancestry.com?
sure.
For those of us who live in Plano, as long as you have a valid library card, lets you get into ancestry.com for free. Before COVID, you could go into, I think it was the Haggard Library up here in Plano, and get into ancestry.com using their computers. During the pandemic, they actually allowed you to do that from home. So I was able to spend a lot of time just sitting at my home computer using ancestry.com for free with my Plano library card, which was very nice.
Yeah, that is nice, because Ancestry can become quite costly. So there's a lot of software out there to begin your search that's available for the Mac. Mac Family Tree, which I think Taylor was talking about. That's the software that he uses. That's by far the most popular application that's available on the Mac for building your family tree. Family Tree Maker 2019 was the last version of that. It's been discontinued, but it actually is still for sale, and you can still download it and install it. Roots Magic, some of these I'm not familiar with. I just know that they are out there. I went to a site and that they provided these software packages listed in order of popularity. So Heredis, Jedit.com.2, iFamily for Mac, and Gramps, which is actually an open source genealogy piece of software. Reunion 13 was way down the list, although it's been around for quite a long time. And I've used Mac Family Tree, I've used Family Tree Maker, and I've used Reunion, but I do my best to try to stick mainly with Ancestry.com. That's my main source. They're one of the largest, obviously, 30+ billion online records. I mean, that's certainly enough to keep you busy for a while. 100+ million family trees are on Ancestry. A lot of people share their trees. My tree, for instance, is not public. I do share it with other family members, but obviously Ancestry would love it if you would share your tree to help others do their research. 3+ million paying subscribers. I can't imagine how much money they actually take in with that 3 million paying subscribers, because I'm one of those that pays Ancestry what I think is quite a bit of money to be able to use their service. I know Richard mentioned that it was free, and that's true. Like I think, if I'm not mistaken, even when you go to the National Archives and you sit down in front of one of their computers, they're basically using the Ancestry.com website. And also the Latter-day Saints. If you go to use one of their computers, I believe they're actually either attached to, well, they're probably attached to Family Search. But 20+ million people in the DNA network, and obviously that's growing. They're always having sales on these DNA kits, and I've purchased them for Christmas presents for my nephews, or my my wife, or my uncle, or whatever, to try to help me in my research. So what does Ancestry offer? They have birth, marriage, baptism, death records, U.S. federal census and voting records, military records, although Fold 3, which is quite the resource for military records, unfortunately is part of their premium subscription. Newspapers.com is also part of the premium subscription, and I always hate it whenever I get a hint and I go and I click on it and it says that it's, they found a newspaper article associated with one of my relatives, and I click on it and it says, please join, or, try a free subscription or whatever. And it's like, you're already paying a ton of money and they want you to take more money to
This is Ray Thompson.
Hey, Ray.
I was going to say, I have found newspapers.com most interesting.
Yes.
And, even outside of genealogy, it's really a kick sometime when somebody's trying to settle an argument. But especially last month, working on Ancestry, I came across some relatives that I way distant from me, but we got in connection. And then there's a terrible story about a murder in the family.
Oh, no.
And they pointed me to newspapers.com, and there was an article about it in the local paper. And then my son was trying to settle an argument about a certain date of a family event. And I went into newspapers.com and sure enough, found it without a great deal of trouble. So I've really used that as an adjunct to Ancestry.
Yeah, I don't know if you were with us early on where I showed that a newspaper article of my great grandfather that I had
Yeah.
found from back in 1916. So yeah, I actually have quite an archive myself that I've downloaded. You can download those images in the PDF form, which is another cool thing. So you can really build your own personal library. They allow you to save out those images. High school yearbooks, they're a lot of fun. Obviously, I've come across images of my mother and various other relatives, even friends for that matter. I've had some fun finding old high school yearbooks, and they'll even deny that's not that can't be me. That doesn't look like me, or I don't remember that. So a lot of those fun to search through high school yearbooks. City telephone directories. You can use those. Immigration and travel records. Obviously, as your ancestors migrated from wherever they came from in the world, those immigration and travel records provide you with some really unique data. Wills, probates, land and tax records. That's one of the things I'm going through right now. I mean, I just went through probating my mother's will. So, I mean, obviously that kind of information becomes public record, which I was really surprised that pretty much, I guess that's where they get why I get so many phone calls, people wanting to buy my mother's house or this or that, because of those public probate records. So court, governmental, criminal records, and there you go, Ray, criminal records. It's, they're out there and available to uncover those mysteries, and very valuable. Other public member trees. I think that's just really cool when you come across somebody that's tied to you, and you can look at their tree and compare yours to theirs, and find additional individuals that you don't have on your tree, and obviously if their tree is out there and sharing, you can very easily migrate some of their information to your tree, which I've done frequently. So thank goodness for public members.
That public trees is what really speeds things up if you're starting out on Ancestry.
Yes, indeed. So Ancestry comes with a cost, as we were talking about. So there's lots of different prices out there available. I went for the World Explorer, which is, if you pay for it in advance, you can save a little bit, rather than doing the monthly thing. If you go ahead and pay for the entire year, they'll give you a discount up front. But yeah, it's a paid service, and this is one that I had Fold 3 and newspapers. You pay obviously a little bit more a month, but if you pay in advance, you can make a nice savings. But it depends on, actually you could start off with one of the services like I did, where I started off with the all access, and as I began to build my tree and felt pretty confident that I had a lot, what I felt like most of the information, then I backed down to a lesser service, because I didn't feel like I was utilizing some of these additional services. Yep, it's trying to take me out to Ancestry, sorry. So as of April the 1st, I found this particular interesting. As of April the 1st of this year, we're all excited because the 1950 census is now becoming available. So the interesting thing is you can actually search now through the National Archives. You can search the 50 census. You can search it through Ancestry. There are some states that are currently available. I have, I'm on their mailing list for the most part, and they have told me in the latest email that I got yesterday that the census records for 7 states are now available, and more than six more states are more than 66% complete. They actually hope to have the complete 1950 census done in 6 months, and obviously that's thanks to the 100,000 some odd volunteers that are helping transcribe these census archives. So it's time for us to embarrass Richard Stoddard. So let's see what we can come up with here. We're going to do a little demonstration, step out and go to the web, and we're going to go to Ancestry. And that little bar at the top is in my way. Let me get it out of my way. So ancestry.com basically looks like this. This is their home page. So there's, you know, there's a lot of things here to persuade you to get started exploring your ancestry. You know, you just read these things, and then you begin by either starting a free trial, which is a 14-day free trial, and that's a good place to start. And then after 14 days, your tree doesn't disappear; it stays there, but you're unable to obviously advance without creating a paid account. So I'm going to sign in to my account. All right, so there's my page for the most part, and from here I can visit my tree, and so there we go. There I am, along with my family members and mother and so forth and so on. So what we're going to do is we're going to come over here and go to create and manage trees, because we're going to add Richard on here. So we're going to go and create a new tree. So this is basically where you're going to start. You're going to start with what you know. So I happen to have received, thanks to Richard, his information for his father. Say, for instance, I can click on father. Come on. Oh, I got to add a home person first. I'm sorry. We're going to start with Richard here.
Hey, comment there, Tim. I'm not subscribed to ancestry.com, but I have a family tree up there and I'm able to edit it.
I don't think you can add to it though. They're not going to give you hints though, unless you have a subscription.
They're emailing me hints all the time.
Tim,
Are you able to?
spell my name?
I'm sorry.
You missed the T in Stoddard.
The T in Stoddard.
S-
S-T. It's S-T-O-D-D-A-R-D.
Okay. There we go.
There you go.
Richard Stoddard. There we go. All right, and he is living, and I'm not going to put his birth date as of yet. So we're going to add his father.
I'm able to add names to mine. I just click the add relative. Huh.
Well,
I think there's a number of things you can do for free on Ancestry. There are a lot of more things you can do if you subscribe, but I think you can just get your basic family tree up if you're for free.
It's possible. Yeah,
I didn't know that.
I didn't know that either, but yeah, I know there's definitely some shortcomings. So the important thing about adding a date is you only want to use a 3-letter designation for the month. That's pretty much the standard for that. So I think I have that correct. You Grant Stoddard for his.
He's deceased.
He is deceased. Okay, so we'll put that in there. And then it's going to ask us to go ahead and save our tree, and I'm not going to allow others to view the tree. So then we can add his mother in here, and we'll just see once we get his mother in here, we'll see if we can go away from the tree and see if once we start getting hints here. Let's see. Let's see.
This just shows me, like I already know, most people who have my name, my first name, Shirley, is a long time ago. There aren't very many Shirleys in kindergartens today, but there were like 7 in my early years of going to school.
So am I doing so good? So far, so good, Richard?
Yes. She's deceased also.
So now we begin to see these little hints here, you know. So let's go back over here and quick edit this and check the fact that she is unfortunately deceased. Now we can already see when we click on her, we can see we already have 10 hints for Shirley there. So now we can begin to look and see if we agree with some of these things that the ancestry is finding. So here it shows that maybe perhaps if this is the correct Shirley, that her father is L.F. Dixon and her mother is Estella Dorat.
That's correct.
Okay, so we can actually review that and compare the details, and add these people as we work up the tree. We say, are we just going to say yes, and then we can say yes, that's correct, and yes, that's correct, and that's correct, and we hit next, and then we can add these new parents here, you know. And it looks like we can add the mother and save to the tree. So now if we go back to,
Although I've always seen Dorat spelled with an A, D-A.
so then we go back to the tree. Now we're looking at this very quickly. You know, we can double check that. We can go back in and can see what some of these, you know, D-A-R-R-A-T-T.
D-A-R-A-T-T, yes.
Yeah, okay, so that's a correction that we probably need to D-R-A-T-T. Yeah, there we go. So it is spelled correct.
Unusual spellings are a big help.
Yeah, and of course the handwriting, if you look at some of these censuses, depending on the year that they were produced, you know, some of this is pretty difficult to read, you know. So here it looks like, you know, a lot of other family members associated with this family. So this is another, you know, obviously we can see that we can grow the tree by adding these additional daughters, and actually it looks like they had a servant. Yeah, they had a servant. It was a female servant at 17 years old. Was born in Kansas, and that servant's father was born in Michigan, and her mother was born in Michigan. They both speak English. Their occupation is a laborer, and I'm not sure what it says. Look like it says baking house, but I can't. Packing house. Can't really read what that says. But for the most part, you know, we it's already showing that it's finding without. I see we can just skip right on up here and collect and view details, and it's going to go out and find information about Richard's great grandfather, hopefully. Hello? Maybe not.
No, this is my grandfather. This would be my grandfather.
Okay, your grandfather, I'm sorry. Yeah, your father's father.
Yes.
All right, let's see if we're gonna.
Where I sent you the information on
There
him.
we go. There we go. So now there we see we have the potential of adding his grandmother. So
Yes,
so is that her name that you're aware of?
that is her.
Yeah. So we can quickly add her, and then immediately as soon as we add her, we get a bunch of different hints with additionally more information. And you can sit here and just absolutely do this for hours. And here's what I was talking about, where you can actually go and review other people that have these very same people in the family tree, of which Richard probably is familiar with some of his relatives that are actually. Here's a Laurel Stoddard, which I'm sure Richard knows who Laurel is. That person actually has a family tree that they've already established. That we could actually visit their tree. There you go. So we can actually look, and there's actually a picture of you right there. You know, Hugh. I'm sorry, not picture of you.
That's my father.
Yeah, there you go.
And
So,
Laurel is my stepsister. She's
yeah.
married to one of my brothers.
So it looks like they've gone back pretty far. You know, you know, so there's like Ray was saying, you know, some of your work is done right there. I mean, if you wanted to share, you know, this person is sharing that tree, and you're able to capture this information from their tree, and it saves you a lot of trouble if you feel like these individuals are correct for your tree. Just out of curiosity, you know, they just keep on going back. So this you might find very interesting, Richard, that you're back to 1740 now, you know.
Yeah.
And then
Tim,
over here on your
do you have any idea if people who in the like 29 and 30s, 1929 and 30, if the immigrants coming had to prove any of who they really were? Because I grew up seeing a 5-year back from my father like this, that I thought had to do with the fact that he was an immigrant and he had to have those papers to prove who he really was when he came.
yeah, these are some of the interesting things that, you know, obviously that you can find out in the research process, you know, things that you think, you know, in fact, I can that's one of the things that you know, I was talking about earlier with the finding of the two brothers and the cousin is, you know, there were stories that I was told, and then you find the facts.
Well, but
Whoa.
the thing about, did the immigrants in the 29, 30s have to have something to prove who they were when they came in?
I
want one of you all to tell me that. I
yeah,
don't want to go look it up.
I would sure that they would have that they were you know, as they were brought through, if they came through, especially came through Ellis Island, that they were, you know,
No, they didn't actually. They came through New York City.
New York City. Okay, well,
So whatever they had to prove everything.
That's where Ellis Island is.
yeah, Ellis Island is in
Yeah,
New
yeah,
York.
but it's out in the island. No, they came in just like you and I. If we were in Europe and we were coming back and we came through New York, that's how they came in. And I know from all their friends, all immigrants also, they all did not come in the same way. And so whatever my parents had individually, they didn't know each, but they must have had some kind of approved papers. I know they had people in the country already who signed for them to come in. It was just neighbors from their own small towns back in Germany.
Shirley, you know, most of that is public records now. Ellis Island, all of those things are public records now. And then the census data, where they were actually enlisted in the census every 10 years.
Yes, I found them.
But of course, it wasn't always correct. You're right about that.
Well, I just know they didn't come through Ellis Island. They came through, like say, New York City, like it was like we would. I say we, assuming that you all can come in as I can with a
Well,
passport.
obviously they'd have to apply for citizenship, and through that process, I'm sure there was some, you know, the facts had to be revealed. I mean, they weren't just let into the country without obviously being checked,
Oh, no, I have miscellaneous paperwork on them.
unless they were just smuggled over the border, you know, smuggled into the country or whatever.
Well,
That they came the father came with a job at Fisher Body, which is old General Motors or General Motors as we used to call it. So he already came with a job thing. So whether the American company giving him the job had something to made coming as into the country easier, I do not know. That's why I'm asking you all.
Yeah, I'm by all means not an expert in this, so I can't honestly give you an answer, but I would certainly think that, you know, they would have to go through the processes that were required back then to enter the country, and to become citizens. You know, they had to swear that the information that they were giving was correct and accurate, and
One of the
Maybe.
most amazing TV programs is Finding Your Roots. And if you want to hear some weird stories about families that had, part of their history they knew nothing about, they really uncover it. It's usually for some of the celebrities, but it's still an interesting story. And then I gotta stick my 2 cents worth in here. Way back when, I don't know what year it was, when I first got into genealogy, I started a genealogy SIG that soon died, but I came and gave a presentation about my family, and I was so excited about it at the time. And the interesting thing about my search was my birth was secret. My mother, a single woman, didn't tell the family about my birth. And so it's a great story, and I've got a whole DVD on it. But anyway, the one woman in the world still alive that knew about my birth, I found her through the web, and she told me about it. And then she told the rest of the family that had never heard it. And suddenly I had 2 new families in addition to my adopted family. And that began a wonderful relationship. I'm so thankful. Both sides of the family accepted me, and they just, I was 70 years old, and within 1 year, and I had never wondered about my birth family. Something that never bothered me because I always knew I was adopted. But I brought all that to the apple core, and one of my blood relatives came to see my presentation. I was so proud of that.
Yeah,
Still am. It was great.
sure. Well, it's a very similar to the story that I was saying about my cousin. My mother, fortunately, when she was alive, when I told her of this cousin that was related to us through the DNA, initially we had a difficulty trying to figure out who in the family he was related to and where his story began. And through the DNA, we were able to figure that it was one of her sisters, who is since deceased, and that my mother began to tell a story of the fact that she remembered she was still living at home. She was still, a youngster, probably in her early teen years, and that her sister was pretty much expelled from the house because she had gone to a graduation for somebody held in California and unfortunately returned pregnant. And so back in those days, obviously the family was somewhat ashamed of the fact that, someone in the family could be pregnant and be unmarried. So she was unable to live at home and be at home. And my mother was eventually told that the child was stillborn, and that was the end of that. Only to find out that no, he wasn't stillborn. He was actually given up for adoption.
Wow.
And now residing in Washington State, and I've had several conversations with him, and it's fun to be able to see the similarities in the resemblance of my aunt's photographs compared to photographs of him, and how much he actually looks like my aunt. And I've been able to pass on things that my mother had that belonged to her sister that he's just treasured, like her prayer book that actually had her name on it. And I've since been able to forward those things to him, and various photographs and such.
Same here. It's wonderful.
And yeah, and I have yet to go up there and see him. I'm going to take this trip to Alaska out of Seattle, and I hope while I'm up there, I'm going to spend some extra days up there, and I hope to to be able to transit the state and perhaps at least go, meet him in person, because it's. And once again, it seems like we don't discover these stories until late in life. I mean, because
Yeah.
I'm 71 now, and I just became interested in my ancestry some 10, 12 years ago. So, as youngsters, we don't think much about it, but as we get older, we get more curious. All right. I don't know where the cause of that might be. So this is something that I think this is what Taylor was referring to earlier, where your DNA can actually tell you what your ethnicity is and where your relatives originated. And over a period of time, they can show you. Let's see, where they immigrated to. As you read through this list here, and you can see these things, these different things highlighting. So it looks to me right here, I have, with my DNA, it shows that I have 42,477 total DNA matches. So I don't know if you can see this little picture, this individual in the center here, but if I go over here and I click this and view all matches, and then I go
A
down
whole
here.
lot in North Carolina.
Yeah. So if I go to this person right here, this happens to be my cousin on my mother's side that shows that I have 14% shared DNA, and it actually shows that he is related to my mother's side of the family. And we were able to trace this person to Frances Letts, who is actually my mother's sister. So we were just remarkably surprised, as my mother was, and she lived to 95, and I don't think she knew about this story up until about 2 or 3 years ago. So it was really a surprise to her, obviously, being told that the child that she had was stillborn. So I thought that was particularly fascinating. Some of these people, obviously, that I have in my DNA that are close relatives, second and third cousins, I know who some of these people are. But as you get into this extended family and you start beginning to see and roll down the list here, you start getting into, very distant cousins, fourth and sixth cousins. I mean, I have no idea. I've never heard of these people before, but yet they share, a little bit of DNA with me.
Less than 1%.
Yeah, but fortunately, there is at this time, let me see, they have there is I want to say, let me go back to my family tree here.
There was one you had up, it was 50%.
There's a little symbol. I don't know if you can see this or not. This little blue symbol right here. This shows the DNA. All these people that have this little blue symbol basically are related to me through my DNA, and it's called Through the Lines. So you can click on this, and you can actually see your relation through the lines, through the DNA lines of where you're actually related to that individual. Some of these are that go way back, the fifth and sixth cousins. I mean, if I scroll down through here and go down to oh gosh, I mean, I got fifth grade. I mean, these are all people that I show to be related through my DNA. All these individuals here. And it's even added some here since I last searched this, potential ancestor. So, Henry Weller, so forth and so on. So, obviously DNA provides you with a lot more information of how extended your family can
Tim,
be.
have you hit on any famous people or presidents that you're
Well,
related?
and actually, I hope to get to that. I've kind of lost my, kind of veered off my presentation here, but that's one of the things that I'm gonna get to
Okay.
in my presentation here momentarily. But it is amazing through technology, what we're able to discover now, and to think that, people didn't even get online to research their ancestry. I mean, the internet even wasn't even around until what, 90s, you know? So it's just, the internet's opened up so much, because used to it would have had to gone to a genealogy center or to a library or some other resource center. But now you can just sit at home and do this, and you can spend your life sitting down in front of the computer researching your tree. So Richard, if it's all right with you, I think we're going to stop there, and I can continue with you later as far as your tree goes. But you can see it just continues to grow. And if you know, and through here, you can see that, you know, it just goes on and on. If I hit yes, unfortunately, it adds these records without adding the other individuals that are associated with that record, which is one of the reasons why I don't like doing it this way, because I like to actually see the other associated individuals that. But you know, these are some of the resources of where that match came from. But it gets very exciting. I mean, you can learn all kinds of things about yourself and where you came from. So let me exit out of this and go back to my Prezo. And so, yeah, here we go. We're trying to prove that we're not related to the kids. That's right. That's what we were shooting for. So this is a nice common resource. There's a thing called a GEDCOM, which is a commonality. It's a file. It stands for Genealogy Data Communications, the acronym there. And it's a standardized file format for storing and transferring your genealogy digitally from one platform to another. You know, chances are you've built your family tree in one piece of software, and perhaps you want to save it out. And you know, say for instance, you were using Ancestry and you said, you know, I'd really like to follow Taylor and see what family was it Family Tree Maker? No, it's into the software that I mentioned earlier. But you know, so you basically download this GEDCOM file from Ancestry or from whatever site you're possibly using, because it's a common file format, and you're able to, without having to type all that information back in, you just basically import this GEDCOM file, and it makes uploading and beginning your tree on another piece of software very easily. So as I started to say, started researching my tree in 2010. I now have, as you saw, 1,991 people in my tree. There's others that have, you know, even thousands more than that, or even less. I've let my tree get very wide. A lot of people like to stay with their direct blood relatives, which is probably what I should have done. I should have pruned my tree and just stayed with those that are closely associated with my ancestry, and not just let it blossom and go so far wide that, you know, we get into storing people in the tree that you know, like I said earlier with the DNA, that you know, these are people that are just so far off related that, you know, there's really no purpose in really having them in the tree unless you're interested in doing that. So my earliest discovered ancestor was born in 1395 that I found, which I think was particularly interesting. And here's my famous connection. So I am actually related to my 8th great-grandmother, which I think is actually my 9th great-grandmother. I'm sorry, I put 8th. It's actually the 9th, I believe it is. But it's Mary Chilton. Mary Chilton came over on the Mayflower. And we'll look at some more information concerning her in just a moment. In fact, I'll just go ahead and click on this link and we can go to that site for the most part. But here's Mary Chilton Wikipedia page, and it shows a drawing of her stepping off onto Plymouth Rock, and a plaque that's hanging in Boston, and then notable descendants of Mary Chilton. So here you go, Richard. George Bush is also a descendant of Mary Chilton. So there you go. I could actually be related, you know, a roundabout way to the Bushes, you know, through Mary Chilton.
Sure. Yes. Nice.
So that's pretty interesting. The other thing that I discovered in this presentation that I became interested in my genealogy through the Cowtown Mac user group some 12 years ago, the fellow that gave the presentation, we found that we were actually distantly related back through William the Conqueror back in 1066. So he had gone back in his ancestry that far. And I know that I'm related to William the Conqueror through my Houghton genealogy. My grandmother's basically her side of the family, her father was a Houghton, and it goes all the way
Hey,
back.
Tim, that makes you a cousin of mine now.
Oh, really?
I'm related to William the Conqueror too.
All right.
Hey,
You know,
cousin.
the theory, of course, is that everyone with European ancestry is related through Charlemagne.
I mean, it's incredible. It's incredible. Yeah, yeah. And I thought it was particularly interested through the Houghton line. There is a place in Lancashire, England, the Houghton, which they actually referred to originally, was called the Hogtown. That's the name changed over the years from Hogtown to Houghton. The Hogtown Castle, and actually William Shakespeare evidently stayed in this very castle. So these are the things that make your ancestry fun, to be able to go back and like Taylor was saying, finding someone in your ancestry that's famous. So because my 9th great grandmother came over on the Mayflower, I can actually hopefully one day become a member of the Mayflower Society. You have to prove your lineage and to join this society. But it would be particularly interesting to since 1897 join the society, and you have to fill out all the appropriate paperwork and so forth. And I think that would be particularly cool to be a part of the Mayflower descendants.
That
Very
it would.
cool.
Yeah. So my next discovery. Oh, here it shows my relation, where it began at the very top. Mary Chilton in 1607 goes down through my family line. This is one of those. This is a chart that really, oddly enough, is only available to you through Ancestry on the iOS platform. You can't actually do this through the web. Produce this particular lineage, but this actually shows my direct relationship through these individuals. From Mary Chilton to me. This particular individual right here, Alfred Houghton, was actually a steamboat commander in Albany, New York, and lived a very short life. He only lived about 40 years, I think it was, from 1810 to 1851. And it's really hard for me to prove my connection to another Houghton that's not listed on this, Darius Houghton, who was served in the Revolutionary War. I've been trying to join the Sons of the American Revolution, and because this one individual here was so short-lived, it's difficult to find written documentation to prove that he is directly related to me. Really, I can't really find even any census data of Alfred to help me produce that. Actually, this person's listed twice. Oh, sorry, got my great grandfather there listed twice. I need to redo my graphic. But anyway, Mary Chilton, there are several books that are available about Mary Chilton that came over on the Mayflower, who obviously Mary Chilton was married to John Winslow, became Mary Chilton Winslow. And these are some interesting books that talk about her voyage. I've kind of looked through them, but I actually haven't sat down and read them cover to cover. But I think obviously it's a very interesting voyage and interesting story. They're all available through Amazon. So here's my American Revolutionary War story. I discovered that several of my great grandfathers basically served in the Revolutionary War. And Darius Houghton's the one of them that I would love to be associated with, and is a son of the American Revolution that, like I said, I can't seem to prove that my relation's through Alfred Houghton. Then there's Jonathan Willis, Benjamin Fenton, and there's been some interesting stories about all of these individuals, and Lou Hickok. But this one in particular, this next one, I discovered the story about my fourth great grandfather, Reverend Joseph Willis. Okay, this one is actually documented and has a citation and is proved to be authentic in fact. That Joseph was only 14 years old. He lied about his age when he enlisted in the Revolutionary War. He was with the division of the Army commanded by General George Washington. And Joseph was entrusted several times with the safekeeping of the general's horse during different engagements, a post which young Joseph considered a mark of distinguished honor. Now, that sends chills down my spine, to think that, I'm related to somebody that actually was a horse handler for the, our first president of the United States. I mean, that's just, what more can you say? So the Civil War was rather unique. Sadly, I discovered that my wife has relatives that served on the Confederacy side. She was born in Beaufort, South Carolina. I was born in Burlington, Vermont. So whereas my relatives served in the Union, so we served on opposing forces, unfortunately, back during the Civil War. This is one of the features that I was talking about earlier that's available on the MyHeritage website. It's almost kind of haunting, but this is called Deep Nostalgia, and it's available only at this point in time that I'm aware of, on MyHeritage. It's an animation feature where you can take still photographs, and with just a touch of a button, you can animate them. So that was a still photograph that through this AI technology, they're able to animate that, which is, to me, is just, I mean, that's just incredibly awesome. And if I was actually on the website, I could choose. There's like 10 different variations that you can choose from in their head movements and their eye movements and so forth and so on, that you can create these animations from that still photograph. One thing I did find through playing with it is you don't want the person to have their mouth open. If they're showing their teeth, it really looks odd. I have a picture of my wife where she's smiling, and I animated it, and it really looks goofy almost, because you really want to find, if you're going to do this, you want to make sure you use a photograph where they've got their lips together, because it really looks bizarre if you use one where the mouth is open. I don't know if anybody else is doing their ancestry is experimented with this website, but it really intrigues me. It's called Deep Nostalgia is what their technology is. They actually have another technology which I haven't experimented with yet. It's called Deep Story, where you can actually make your photos of your relatives animated and speak, which is, it actually through the AI will do some kind of very unique lip synchronization to actually mouth out the words that you tell as they tell this story. And talk about haunting. I mean, you look back at, someone that you have a still photograph that you've animated, and now they're talking to you. I mean, that's just, it's just truly bizarre what artificial intelligence is capable of nowadays. Obviously, a lot of books out there. I bought these from Ancestry. I've used little bits and pieces of each one of them. This will help you get started with genealogy, and also continue or provide you with some of the advanced capabilities of where to look and how to search and find your past. So a few books available for you there. This is a workbook where you can actually write in it and document as you're working a workbook. Then there's magazines. This one in particular I do subscribe to, Family Tree Magazine, and also their website, the Family Tree Magazine website. It's incredible. I mean, there's just so much information I can't even keep up with what they publish. It's a very good magazine that if you're into genealogy, it might be something that you might be interested in subscribing to, Family Tree Magazine. There's Internet Genealogy. This lady's already got a headache from doing from going through the research. or she's going, I can't believe that they actually found, but anyway. And then this one I haven't seen, but I know it's out there and available. And this is one of the things that Ray was talking about. The Who Do You Think You Are? This magazine's based off of somewhat off the TV show, Who Do You Think You Are? Finding Your Roots was the other TV show. But those are the two TV shows that basically have made Ancestry very popular nowadays, and they're very intriguing to watch, even if it's not somebody you even know. But generally, it's famous people. When you watch these shows, it's generally famous people. But sometimes it's somebody that I've never heard of. But how they uncover these facts about these people is just fascinating. That's what a professional genealogist can do for you. Which I would just wonder what it would be like if I could just take a few $100 or whatever it costs and say, find out about how I can get more information about my relation to Darius Houghton to help me become a member of the Sons of the American Revolution. And I can't imagine what that person might be able to uncover. So there's podcasts also available. And this is one of the things that I really enjoy is so many people just don't even think about podcasts, but there are so many different topics out there that you could take advantage of and listen to and even watch. They have video podcasts along with audio podcasts. It's a great resource. It's an overlooked resource that Apple's provided through an app, the podcast app for the most part, both available on the iOS and on the Mac OS podcasts. And there's several ones that deal with genealogy. And there are some weekly, but there's 3 or 4 right here, different podcasts to listen to. You could just spend your life sitting down listening and watching and researching your past and really become a couch potato. So there's some excellent websites. Family History Guide, if we visited that, basically it's going to guide you through free learning research activity center. Click here to get started. This is, for anything that I may have missed or to maybe reiterate some of the things that I've talked about, that would be a good place for you to visit. The other one is the Ancestor Curiosity Center. I guess I didn't put the link on that. Shucks. So anyway, I'm going to stop here. I know I've run long. Certainly hope that everyone's enjoyed the presentation, and I hope you can hardly wait to begin exploring your ancestry. So that's all, folks.
Great.
So,
thank you very much.
Thank you, Tim. Thank you.
Yeah. I enjoyed putting it together, and I hope I didn't put anybody. I don't see anybody napping, but but I hope that any of those that are not doing this start doing it, and I think you will have inherited a new hobby.
It's definitely a hobby that has taken up a lot of my time in the past. I've been working on my family tree for many years.
Yeah.
As I'm sure a lot of you have. And the first thing you talked about in your presentation was just the facts.
Yeah.
Well, in my experience, some of that is what is my judgment on what is a fact. Because I don't always find the citations, the hard citations for something, but I see that there are 10 other family trees out there that have the same lineage on them. So sometimes I have to decide, is that a fact I'm willing to accept?
That's the interesting thing that I found out. Don't mean to interrupt you, Richard, but that's the interesting thing I found about joining the Sons of the Revolution. I can prove through my DNA that I'm related to Darius Houghton. They won't accept that. They want published, written, factual information that shows my,
Yeah, they follow the legal trail. My father had to do that too. So very much legal documentation is all that matters to them.
And it just is so disappointing because I really wanted to be a member of that society before my mother passed away. I really wanted to show her a certificate that I was a member of the, Sons of the American Revolution. She was not my mother, but my grandmother was actually daughters of the American Revolution. And you can't get grandfathered in, which is, it's like, yeah, here's the application that shows that my great grandfather was a member of the American Revolution, Sons of the American Revolution. Sorry.
Richard, on what you said about facts versus judgments. That is intriguing because there are secrets. When an entire family didn't know about my birth, that's pretty unbelievable. It's a family of 12. And this was my mother was a beloved aunt, old maid aunt. And everyone believed that absolutely. They knew her well and all this, that, and the other.
Yes.
And then this one person says, well, Aunt Ida did have a child. So you have to, if you think you know something, you kind of have to keep it keep it as a possibility.
So in my research, I believe I have run across a few situations like yours from the 1700s, or and that is a total dead end. There is no way I'm going to ever be able to prove anything like that. I mean, there's no records, there's nothing. And it's it's a family folklore thing. So, and a few of those are blocking me the same way that Tim is being blocked. So it is very frustrating sometimes.
My father did a lot of genealogy, and he joined the Sons of the American Revolution and the Texas one, and so he was in another one, and I think he applied for the Mayflower one, but I don't think he got in that one. But anyway, there was one group that he really wanted to join, and it's one of the hardest groups to be able to qualify to join. It's over in the UK. And basically, it's the children or descendants of illegitimate royalty, and their nickname is the Royal Bastards. But because the royalty is the government, it's really hard to prove you're a royal bastard. But my dad was trying really hard. He thought that'd be the most fun thing to.
And they won't take DNA, I guess.
You don't think, though, as the people finally realize what we know in science, that these DNAs won't help prove some of this? It won't be hearsay. A simple blood test will show it. And if it's less than 1%, to me, that doesn't count much. But when somebody has 25% of the same blood as you do, that's a relation.
Well, but these societies are very old, and they have wrapped themselves around the legal proofs that you can do, which of course, among other things, have issues where someone really swapped a baby with someone or things like that. I mean, other weird things have happened that would really technically not make them but anyway, but they very much, these societies follow what you can legally prove, not just because you have a picture in a graveyard or something.
Yeah, but old-fashioned legally prove. And the science facts are very slow to get into our rules and regulations. People like to believe the rules from 10 or 20 or 30 or 40 or 50 years ago.
Well,
Problem, Shirley, the problem.
But it's
sad
not accepted.
to say, when you begin looking at DNA relationships, you run into things like rape that uncover a really maybe terrible story, and you just can't push past that unless somebody wants to help. Unless somebody's willing to.
The other thing, just with the pure science and mathematics and statistics, shows that it doesn't take very long before the DNA is diluted to the point where you can't rely on it. And Family Tree DNA, the site that I'm on, that I sent my DNA to, cautions you that you really shouldn't start establishing these relationships purely on DNA. You need to have the backup citations and the things written down to establish a true relationship. So, I mean, I don't know that we're ever going to be able to rely strictly on a DNA relationship. It's just, it gets too diluted too quickly.
It's a supporting document. It's like many of the others, a birth certificate and baptism, death certificate. It's one of multiple supporting tools, but it's not by itself. You know, just like any of the other tools by themselves is not enough,
Yeah.
you know, really for proof.
Fascinating stuff.
So Taylor, let me share something with you. Here, this shows our relationship through the William the Conqueror here. This is the Hogtown Tower. And in this article, it does mention at the time of William the Conqueror. So our ancestors, I guess, visited this castle.
Well, I have to dig up and show you my connection back to William the Conqueror. My dad has it on the thing, and I'll have to show that over to you. And we'll have to have a dinner out and toast being long distance customs from the William the Conqueror evening out.
Yeah, yeah.
Well, I
Well,
won't be there.
you know about Adam and Eve, don't you?
Hey, I'm related to them.
Yeah. I would think so. I would think so.
As well as Noah and his family.
Yeah. Yeah.
Taylor, I hope I don't have to bring my citations to join your William the Conqueror get together.
Yeah.
Well, I know I won't have any because as far back as my father used to do it, so his is 5 years behind him is what he had, but I have the whole paper thing of it. And they're all in that tiny small town where he and my mother, well, he didn't know my mother then, but he did both sides of the family. And it's all from the southeast corner of Germany.
Wow.
And apparently I would say for those, what for me would be 7 generations worth. People didn't move very far away. They moved, what, I don't know if it's even 10 miles up or down the way. I bet it's only a couple of miles from one little town to the other, but they didn't move much for that set of what will now be 7 generations worth.
Another story that I neglected to mention is on my wife's side, her relatives basically were tobacco farmers in South Carolina. And I uncovered and presented at her mother's eulogy that during that time, during World War II, when they were running the tobacco farm, they had German prisoners of war that actually worked their tobacco farms. And it was documented that they were treated very well. And one of the prisoners, I don't remember the name, but anyhow, one of the prisoners returned to Germany after the war, only to come back and become a citizen and work for that family because he was treated so well during the war. And I thought that was a really pretty interesting fact, you know, that in Darlington, south of Darlington, I can't remember the city, but it's south of Darlington, South Carolina, that the prisoner of war actually returned to go to work for the same farm that he was held as a German.
I would guess that you would find more stories just like that. Not related necessarily, but the same kind of story.
Yeah, well, we have no relation to this person other than the fact that, yeah, I found it fascinating that in the documentation that he worked for them and then returned to them because of the way he was treated. And we visited that house on that plantation, and my wife, and at that point in time, her mother was still alive, and as was her grandmother. And she was recalling stories about them actually being invited into the house. And my wife's mother, being a young, attractive girl, was told to keep her distance away from these, you know, individuals, you know. So it was, you know, it's pretty cool, you know, to hear stories like that, you know, that she was, you know, attracted to them because, you know, some of them were, you know, young, you know, attractive Germans, you know.
And if they worked hard, they were probably.
And they were fed well, they worked hard, and yeah, and yeah, it's so, you know, it's. And I also did not mention, and I know that Lawrence is not with us here, but, you know, researching Black history obviously is very difficult because of, like with Lawrence, say, for instance, you know, it's documented that some descendants of his, or not descendants, but his lineage basically is related to slavery. And, you know, it was during those times, you know, some of these people weren't documented, or they had different names, or they were assigned different names, or they didn't know their names. So there are specific sites that deal and help people to try to find their families in that regard. Same for the Jewish descendants. There's specialized.
Very early on Ancestry, after I submitted my DNA, I had a match to a black woman, and we've remained good friends. And both of us have done, you know, quite a bit of our family tree, but we've never found where that came in. But of course, it happens, especially in our good old USA slavery culture. And so we're still wondering if that's it could be just a mistake, but
Well,
DNA.
my parents were walking around my neighborhood a number of years ago, and they ran into an adjunct professor of African American Studies from SMU. He's retired now, named Clarence, and it turns out he's related to Governor Bradford, and so are we, and which technically makes us cousins here. And so he just lives a couple of blocks over, and that's my cousin Clarence Glover. And we were both related back to Governor Bradford, but just kind of like Ray was saying, going through the slavery times, there were some marriages and things like that. So, but it is kind of funny. So he's my African American cousin just from a couple of blocks over that we just found out. And right there, he was had put that together because he was going to teach some young African American boys what cotton really was like, and picking it and stuff. And so anyway, but he's an interesting guy, and it's kind of funny to realize we were related and we just live a couple blocks from each other.
I remember you sharing this story before, as I recall. Yeah.
Amazing.
Yeah. That is interesting. Yeah. Wow. Well, I hope everybody got maybe one thing out of that. So,
Oh, we got lots of things.
Oh,
Thank you very much.
I got more than that, Tim, because I got to see. My sister-in-law my sister-in-law is already doing that, and she's married to my next brother down. And
well, I appreciate you sharing the information with us and allowing you to be the guinea pig there and actually do a live demonstration of, kind of how to get starting from the beginning.
That was no
Yes,
problem.
thank you.
The one problem that I'll probably run into is if I ever try to do Barbara's, because I forget whether it was like her grandfather or great grandfather, whatever. His name was Don Jaime de España, and I think that was on her father's side. And he came over from Spain, and that much she knew, and he had land grants and stuff like that. But then when he decided to stay here, then he took the entire family out back and he burned the land grants.
Wow.
And if you
I forgot to ask, did Larry get going? Can you hear us, Larry?
Yes, I did, and I really appreciate it. It was excellent.
Good. I'm glad.
Comment also, I guess if you use this system, you can go visit the world and have a place to stay with your cousins.
Good thought.
Yeah. I have relatives on both sides of the country, so I pretty much covered, I guess, as far as this country is concerned. I've got a brother in Huntington Beach that's a surfer now that used to be a high-rise welder. And then I've got the other two brothers that found me through ancestry that live in Washington, D.C. So, and they privileged me while I was up in Washington, D.C. because Michael's wife actually worked for President Bush, and we actually got to visit things that most people, the general public, would not get to visit because he works for the Maryland Police Department, and was able to get the concrete barriers lowered down in front of the White House and get us into places that most people don't get to see, which was really, really cool.
Yeah, I was going to make the comment that when you and Taylor get together, y'all need to go to medieval times.
Yeah, yeah.
That would be appropriate for William the Conqueror.
Yeah, I haven't been there in a long time, but I do remember going there. And there was a place in Dallas. I don't know if it's still in Dallas or not. Is it?
Yeah, it's still in Dallas.
Yeah, it is. Hey,
Yeah.
maybe we should do that.
Yeah, eat with our hands and get real sloppy.
Yeah.
So maybe you should invite our active MAC group to go along with you,
Well, there you go. Yeah.
There we go.
because that's a kind
Certainly
of
be
place
fun.
that quite a few people can go.
Yeah. Yeah, that's I haven't been there since my daughter was a child, but I remember going to medieval times and watching the, you know,
Seems like I've gone to that too, but it'd be like 30 years ago or something.
yeah. One of those places where I think you only go once, I guess. Because I've only been once.
Well, you go once a generation, which means if you have children and grandchildren, you get to go 1 and 2 more times.
Yeah, it's a good show. If I remember correctly, I remember it being quite, it's almost when they're doing the jousting, it's like, oh my God, how do they keep from killing each other,
Or if you have guests in town.
Yeah.
That's
Yeah.
a good time too.
But there you go. Yeah, we could stand up and make an announcement to everybody, Taylor. We're related. Yeah.
Fun. Okay.
So what's
well,
up for next month, Richard?
I don't have anybody yet, so I'm going to have to start working on that.
But now we know that we can each do 10 minutes of our own history to share with others.
Yeah. Well, that might be interesting. Next month we could, let everybody share what they found out.
Oh, I didn't do the arithmetic well.
Yeah.
5 minutes.
Yeah.
If we each do 5 minutes of our own history, I think we can do it in more or less an hour each.
An interesting family story that.
Not a bad idea. Homework assignment. Everybody gets to brag about their family. That would be
Yeah.
Well, or tell
certainly.
brag.
Okay, I'm gonna
Well,
end the recording here. So get about to stop it right now. So it is
Okay.
now stopped.